I said, you're right. Well, we're going to be held in contempt, mister. Yeah.
You're gonna be the boss today, huh?
Oh, no, no. I'm
You
just here
got
to
the
help.
hammer.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, I'm just actually having fun. Just amusing. Just trying to wake myself up. Hey, are you one of these people?
Yeah, I'm gonna be here.
Okay, cool. I've got something to show you. It's pretty cool. This is a new implementation. Try to just come around and show you. It's pretty snazzy. Instead of going through the whole laptop deal, so what they're doing is they're testing out for to make it easier for like the board members like yourself.
Uh-huh.
And so what we're doing is that they're pulling the agenda like on this deal, and you can if you need to like say make it bigger or larger, you just yeah exactly. Oh yeah, oh shoot, this
Cool.
could be too. Yeah, you make things easy. I agree. Um, but I think the hardest thing you'll come across is that they time out faster because I think it has something to do with the policy.
So you just hit it there.
Well, exactly. There's one thing, but say it does turn off or whatever. Here you got. It's gonna ask you for your password, and it's actually right there. It's capital T, and it's really the only.
Okay, so it times out. You got to put the password.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll ask you for the code. Now the key we did enable the keyboard to work, but if should it not work, is the backup is actually on the screen keyboard or whatever. So.
Okay.
So, but I'll just show you real quick for an example. Say it times out, this will work like, and then you swipe, and then see my password is just Texas. So just Texas is. Then you just
Cool.
come in, and then it'll bring you back to the screen. But okay, now should something go wrong, like say you exit too far out of the thing, is you're just gonna go here, and then this is what it looked like. Say if you stray off the path or whatever, so you just look for this content folder, and you strike it, and then it'll bring up your document.
Okay.
That's literally it. So we're hoping you guys like this better, and then we're gonna actually change to that format. Should it be a success? So, which is I'm hoping that's the case.
Okay.
It's pretty snazzy. I like it.
Yeah, that's it. Cool.
So then or type away. What's up? Sir, you sitting here or actually no? It's gentleman's. Is that you? Oh, is that you sitting here, sir?
I guess, but you sit where you need to.
Okay. Oh no, I'm just here to help you all out. So go ahead and sit down. Take a seat. Okay, so basically this is your move it around. And instead of going down like traditional, it's just gonna be to your right. And so if you need something. And then of course if you lock your fit. This one I think this one times out more than this one.
We went
So
out your
let's say
way.
it goes this way, or time out with that.
Oh, yes. We're gonna sit back here and use the desk to write on. Let's find the last.
Okay, it's 7 minutes after 10. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Roll call. Frank Riley couldn't be here today. Don Parrish, Gary Foster.
Here.
I'm here. James Nance and Alan.
I'm here.
So we have a quorum, and I certify that the quorum is present. First item on the list is approval of the minutes from the January 28th meeting.
Only thing I see that we need to correct on the minutes is, there's a couple of places where it has Frank Riley's as being the officer, and it needs to be as acting presiding officer, Pat Nance.
Third paragraph, where's the other?
Yeah, it's the third and next to the last, I believe it was. Yep, no, the last two. It has Frank
And it
Riley.
should be Frank Riley.
Yes,
okay?
those are the only corrections I see. Other than that, I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Second and approve, second and,
He moved. I
he
seconded.
moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved as changed. Next item on the list is the staff reports. No public comment. We have any public comment? Then we'll go to staff reports from Mr. Beaumar.
Mr. Chairman, we do have an executive, I was going to give you a brief executive report.
Right.
So, my name is George Ferry. I'm the Director of the Compliance Division. I'm sitting in this morning for Executive Office. They're a little tied up. I guess probably the most significant thing I can tell you in relating to the Executive Office is a change in leadership. I'm not sure if y'all are aware, but our Executive Director of some 16 or 17 years now, or is it 18? Hard to say.
Almost 17.
Almost 17. Mr. Bill Kuntz is retiring at the end of this month. Obviously, we're happy for him. We're sad for us. Bill and Brian are a great team, and we're going to be sorry to see Bill go, but I suspect we'll still be seeing Bill from time to time around here. So he's a great support to us and a great source of knowledge, and has been a great leader for this agency. Really turned things around in the years he's been here. So want to let y'all know that. The commission has announced that Mr. Francis, Brian Francis, will be taking his place as executive director. So that would happen September 1. Want to let y'all know that, and just kind of a heads up, the legislative stuff is starting already. The legislative session starts in January, but they're already holding committee hearings, basically to discuss the interim charges that were given to these committees. The Licensing and Administrative Procedures Committee will be meeting later this month. I forget the exact date. I think it might be the 23rd. And we will be attending that meeting to talk about licensing and regulation. They're going to talk about the need for regulation period, different professions and that kind of stuff. Should be a lengthy and interesting discussion. But anyway, that's basically what I have to report to you today for the Executive Office. Do you have any questions?
Nope. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Beaumar, thank you.
Yes, I'm George Beaumar, Weather Modification Program Specialist at TDLR. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under the Office of Innovation, where this function fits at the moment, I want to give you a update on, first, the assessment that was done of projects, rain enhancement projects in 2015 in the state of Texas. When the committee last met in January, the analysis for last year had not been completed, and so you will find in your folder the assessment done by Dr. Ruiz, who has been analyzing the rain enhancement projects, most of those projects, for a number of years now, and you have before you his annual evaluation for 3 of the projects that were conducted during 2015 in the Texas Panhandle, the Edwards Plateau, and in the Winter Garden area south of San Antonio. And so I'd like to refer to that annual evaluation report for just a moment. The Trans-Pecos project, as you may recall, was not operational in 2015, and so the analysis that he did is only for the 3 projects that are based in Pecos, San Angelo, and Pleasanton. The season was much like those preceding it, began in late March, ended in early October. The number of operational days total for those 3 projects was 96. That's lower than the 10-year average, in part because only 3 projects were evaluated last year using the radar-derived assessment with the Titan software, the same procedure that he's followed for a number of years. The part of the report that I pay the most attention to is the small clouds section, and I say that because we know that the Titan software, when it was originally developed, was intended to work with small cloud systems. And even though the estimated amount of rainfall generated by seeding these small clouds is only a small fraction of the total amount of estimated rainfall from both small and large clouds, I think it is instructive to see again that the most important parameters like precipitation flux, precipitation mass, cloud mass, area, duration, and the volume of the cloud. In every instance, there was a significant increase in the seeded small clouds compared to nearby or neighboring control area small clouds. And I want to specifically point out that on page 2 of his evaluation report, he states that the effective AGI dosage over the course of the season at these 3 projects was about 55 ice nuclei per liter. That's down somewhat from previous years, but an excellent increase of 137% in precipitation mass when looked at together with an increase of 45% in cloud mass illustrates that the seeded clouds grew at the expense of the environmental moisture that was available, but only a small fraction of that moisture that was entrained by these seeded systems was used for their own maintenance. In other words, as these clouds continue to develop, and when they're seeded, they continue to entrain moist air from below, but only a small amount of that moisture, when converted from vapor to liquid, is used to sustain the cloud, and most of it is being converted into rainwater that's being released. And so that's an explanation for the estimated output of about 121,000 acre-feet of water from those 3 projects over the course of the 2015 season. The dosage for the large clouds, those that were multi-cell complexes that tend to be the most prolific rain producers, was near 100 ice nuclei per liter, and that's considered to be about optimum. And the estimated output from the large clouds that were seeded was 814,721 acre-feet, which is about a 6-fold increase over the output from the single clouds. And in his evaluation, as he has done in previous years, he breaks that down into the number of seeding occurrences per county for the 3 project areas. And I wanted to point out that in his evaluation, he found that the meteorologist directing the seeding aircraft did not miss a single opportunity during the course of the 2015 season. And I believe that's a first in all the years that we have been evaluating using the Doppler weather radar data, that we've not had a few cases where seeding opportunities were missed simply
Didn't miss a
because
single
the
one.
clouds developed so quickly.
Excellent.
Yeah. Any questions about his report from last year?
Explain to me what a type B cloud is.
A type B cloud is a multi-cell thunderstorm complex that forms outside of the target area and then migrates into the target area. It's already been generating rainfall for a significant period of time. Didn't originate within the target, but became an influence on rainfall occurrences in the target. Seeded, but not before it had reached its half-life, once it got inside the target area. And several of these storms, for instance, on average, were 126 olds when 126 minutes old when the operation began. So they're systems that had already become productive outside of the target, but by the time they got within the target, they were being seeded in order to prolong their life and generate additional rainfall. On average, the operation of type B clouds lasted 31 minutes.
Yeah.
And some of them lasted for several hours.
The reason I asked that is it just the increase wasn't as large as what it was in the other type of cloud.
Yes.
Curious. And it's probably because the reason the increase wasn't as large because they reached them after they've been, after their half-life.
Exactly.
I have one other question on the West Texas weather mod. Greg might be able to answer this, but in Crockett County, the increases were significant less than the rest of the counties. Like it was, I guess it was 5.3%. I'm guessing it's because of the larger county. Is the reason the increase was less? Because they have more area in the county? Or is that taken consideration? And we could, if he has an answer for me, well, then he can answer when he comes up.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
The next item to report on is the status of permitted weather modification operations this year. And I provided for you a paper copy of a directory of the 6 rain enhancement projects. There's an additional hail suppression project that's not listed. I'm identifying the rain enhancement projects for you and giving you a sample of a status report that we received from a project. This one happens to be the Rolling Plains project that's performed by the SOAR program, the Seeding Operations and Atmospheric Research program. That program is in its second year and became operational in late June. This is just an example of the sort of information that the project provides to any interested person, as well as the sponsoring counties, showing where the aircraft were located at the time that flares were ignited. And the other projects also have this sort of information that's readily available at their websites. And I do have website addresses on the 2016 directory for you in the event you want to observe up-to-date reports from the various projects or want to get this information to someone else that might want to stay up to date on where the seeding activity is taking place. All of the projects that are listed here, with the exception of the Southwest Texas Rain Enhancement Association, have been functioning now for several months. The Trans-Pecos program is back in operation this year. The meteorologist for the West Texas program, based in San Angelo, is providing the meteorological direction for the Trans-Pecos operation, as well as the rain enhancement program that's going on in the Edwards Plateau. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next item, which is studies assessing environmental impacts of seeding agents used in Texas. At our January meeting, we had a request from someone who made public comment, and the committee subsequently advised staff that it would be good to do a survey of the literature in order to come up with a current listing of studies that have been made to determine, is there any detrimental effect of using silver iodide on the environment? And so over the course of the last several months, I've been going through various publications and published papers. Suffice it to say, there's not a wealth of research in this area. Back when the federal government began awarding grants to states, including Texas, to do cloud seeding research in the 1970s, one of the requirements was that each state, Texas among them, do an environmental impact statement, and a part of that assessment would involve trying to determine if there would be any contamination of the environment, plant life, animal life, within target areas where the cloud seeding was concentrated. And so there were several studies done during the 1970s that I want to just briefly refer to illustrate that this is not a new subject. It's one that's been around for decades. It has been addressed to, I would say, a satisfactory degree for those in the meteorological community and in the weather modification community particularly. And I'm going to refer to a couple of reports that are in print from the American Society of Civil Engineers. The ASCE has a publication called Guidelines for Cloud Seeding to Augment Precipitation, and also a standard practice document for the design and operation of precipitation enhancement projects. I was a co-author of these reports, and we were required to do a literature survey as we were writing these reports. And the two that I want to cite this morning are by Cooper and Jolly, 1970, and Klein, 1978. Those studies reveal the following, and I quote, "During the 1970s, the most seeding agents, chemical complexes of silver iodide, were examined for ecological effects. Conclusions from those studies point to little or no effects on terrestrial or aquatic biological communities, either immediately or after many, many years of silver or iodide application in the small dosages possible from cloud seeding." And an additional statement is this: "Equal time must be given to the possibility of positive outcomes, although most research has focused on conceivable environmental impacts in the negative sense. Added precipitation or stabilized annual precipitation indeed may be beneficial to the ecology in many instances." In other words, a lot of the talk about the use of silver iodide has been, what kind of harm is it doing to the environment? And the studies reveal you cannot measure any harm. And secondly, why not talk about the positive impact from additional rainfall? What kind of an effect will it have on the environment? But I also want to quote from the standard practice document. In the last several decades, numerous projects have conducted environmental assessments or prepared environmental impact statements without any adverse findings. Most cloud seeding agents are not considered hazardous. Studies that were done in the 1970s and 80s concluded that the major environmental concerns about nucleating agents, that is, effects on plant growth, game animals, fish, and so on, appear to represent negligible environmental hazards. But before I leave the subject, I want to cite something that's much more recent and I believe much more comprehensive and compelling. It's a paper published in 2009 by a team of scientists who worked for the Australian government. It's entitled An Assessment of the Environmental Toxicity of Silver Iodide with reference to a cloud seeding trial in the Snowy Mountains of Australia. The Australians have been seeding in the Snowy Mountains since about 2001. And before they've actually been doing research, not seeding on an operational basis, but in the early years, in the early 2000s, their work was strictly research, and the government required them to do an environmental impact statement, which entails a very elaborate assessment over several years. And I just want to read a few citations from their final report because I do believe it's the most aggressive treatment of the subject. Does seeding material contaminate the environment to any significant degree that we have available to us today? Quoting from the report, an extensive review of the literature was undertaken prior to commencement of the project to determine if the use of silver iodide seeding agent would have an adverse impact on the environment. Although silver ions from water-soluble silver salts have been shown to be toxic to aquatic species, this is not the case for the insoluble silver iodide. Many studies have shown that the toxicity of the silver ion in water is significantly ameliorated by the presence in water of the chloride ion, carbonate ion, sulfide ion, and dissolved organic carbon. Recent research has shown that silver ion concentrations in natural waters are negligibly small, and an investigation in the study area has confirmed many of these ameliorating factors to be present. And the last statement that I want to cite, the Snowy Precipitation Enhancement Research Project monitoring results to date have all shown mean concentrations of total silver to be well below any level of concern, and we consider the risk of an adverse ecotoxicological impact resulting from the use of silver iodide for this project to be negligibly small. And even though that report is 7 years old, it's, to my knowledge, the most recent treatment of the subject that we have published today.
And it certainly backs up the study of 1970. I
It
think you
does.
summed it up. Nobody can prove it's bad, and it's easy to prove it's good. End of discussion. Thank you, George.
I have one last item under staff reports, articles in the national press on cloud seeding. I thought I would share this article that appeared in the early summer. A utility company in Tasmania, that's a state in Australia, has been doing cloud seeding, and this article reports that cloud seeding occurred on the day that a huge rainstorm approached the country's east coast and caused some massive flooding. The rainstorm system caused some massive flooding, there was a loss of life. In the article, there is a statement to the effect that There is evidence that previous cloud seeding operations had worked, and the inference was, therefore, it will have exaggerated the flood to some extent. Anyway, the government has requested additional information on where and how soon the seeding occurred once the storm system came on land and caused the flooding that did some damage and cost human life. I just wanted to share this with you to say that this has happened many times before in various parts of the world where seeding operations were taking place, and then you had a really bad storm. It might have been a tropical storm or a hurricane move inland. Something catastrophic happened, and when it was learned that cloud seeding had been going on in the area, there's a jump to associate seeding with the deleterious effects of the torrential rains. This article brought back to mind the episode in 1979 when Tropical Storm Charlie struck the South Texas coast, came inland, and caused some torrential rains in the Del Rio area. The agency that I worked for at the time had just permitted a rain enhancement project for the Del Rio area, and there was a contractor working out of the Del Rio airport, and they were seeding the storm as it approached, but at some great distance from the target area in Val Verde and surrounding counties. And as soon as they realized there was a flash flood threat, the seeding was suspended. The suspension occurred the day before the floods happened in the Del Rio area. And the news media got wind of the fact that there was a cloud seeding program going on in the area at the time the storm moved inland, and questions were asked, to what extent did the seeding cause the serious flooding in Del Rio? The contractor immediately released the daily operations report to show that there was a suspension of seeding more than 24 hours before the flooding rains began in Val Verde County. And because that disclosure was made immediately, it seemed to satisfy the press, and the issue went away totally. It was also observed by the contractor that seeding material, when exposed to sunlight, loses its capacity as a nucleating agent within a matter of a couple of hours. And so if you suspend seeding 24 hours before a serious flooding situation occurs, there's no logical basis for inferring that the seeding would have caused the flooding that happened on the following day. But I don't know that that happened in the case with Tasmania, and so they have some lingering issues that they're having to address. It just emphasizes the fact that folks that do weather modification need to keep good records, and our folks do. And they need to be in a position to release those records and data quickly in order to dispel any suspicions that they were in any way associated with a harmful weather event. I do not know if in Tasmania the permitted cloud seeding has any sort of suspension criteria at play. But I would, of course, remind us all that the permits that we issue here at TDLR to these rain enhancement projects do have cloud seeding suspension criteria in them. And the meteorologists that work here in the state of Texas are well aware of those suspension criteria and adhere to them every season.
Was there any results from that were issued from the investigation?
I actually do not have an updated report to give you on that. I'm assuming not much has happened, or it would have been put in the news media.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And that
George.
concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item F on the agenda
Chairman.
is the field meteorologist report.
Mr. Chairman, before we move off of item E, It's come to my attention that I've skipped over a couple of items under E1, B, overview of the TDLR's strategic plan, and C, TDLR's legislative appropriations request. I just wanted to touch on those two items briefly. We have published our strategic plan. It's on our website under agency reports, and covers the years 2017 to 2021. Just briefly, so the strategic plan is something that every state agency has to do every couple of years. We have a pretty robust, shall we say, process for doing strategic planning. And a big part of that is going out and talking to all the interested parties. So we have internal brainstorming sessions for our staff. We have brainstorming sessions around the state, El Paso, Amarillo, Lubbock, Austin, Tyler, I think we did Dallas, the Valley. And we get information primarily, we ask 4 basic questions. What are we doing well? What can we do better? If you were king or queen for a day, what one thing would you change in law or rule? And then we ask what people see coming down the road in the next 5 years, not only just kind of technology, but things within their own profession, their own program. We put that together with instructions we get from the Legislative Budget Board, or in this case, actually the Governor's Office, and put together a strategic plan. This year's plan is a little shorter than past plans, and so it's a quick read if you want to go and read. One of the other things that is included are goals, that very broad goals that the agency will be looking to comply with. You can go and read those in the strategic plan, and there's several pages of items that were identified in laws that seem to be redundancies or impediments to either the licensing itself or to the people practicing those particular professions. So I encourage you, it includes our mission, talks about who we are, what we do, how we do it. And if you look on the page about the mission, you see our agency mission, excuse me, vision, philosophy, and our core values. So if you want to know what we're about, read that page, because it gives the base, what underlies everything we do here at TDR, and how we approach our what we do and how we approach our customers, what we try to do for the citizens of Texas. The other document is the legislative appropriations request. So that's the please give us money document. For the next biennium, which, let's see, this is 16, 17, so 18 in the years 2018 and 2019. We have, I think, pretty much completed that document, but wrapping up some details, and that will also be published on our website. So if you want to see where the money goes, you can go look at that document. But I encourage you, like I said, we put all this kind of stuff out there for everyone to look at and really get an understanding of how we do things, and to perhaps make suggestions. We do, like I said, do these brainstorming sessions every couple of years, but every day we're willing to take any suggestions that people have for better ways to do things, a way to improve our services, and the ways we could help them. So wanted to make sure I covered those 2 important items before we moved on, and any questions on those?
Thank you, George. What's your outlook for the next legislative session now that oil is kind of taking a dip?
Well, we've already been told we have to reduce our budgets by 4%. That's part of the from our current budget. So that's, we don't get oil money. We don't get money from general appropriations. Our agency is funded strictly on the fees that we collect. But nevertheless, all state agencies were told reduce your budget 4%. So that's a direct result of the reduced money coming in from oil. So that's the main way that affects us, though. Does that answer your question, sir? Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greg, welcome.
Thank you. Craig Funky with West Texas Weather Modification, South Texas Weather Modification, and Texas Weather Modification. I am not a meteorologist. But what I have is a prepared note from Jonathan Jennings, the West Texas and Trans-Pecos Weather Modification meteorologist, and Kendall LaRouche, who is our new South Texas Weather Modification meteorologist. And I think I gave you all a sheet with the rundown of the operations so far this year. Just kind of a brief summary on how things have been going. And you can see West Texas, just to run through this real quick, 18 operational days, 40 total flights, 10 recons. 10 reconnaissance flights, that's really on the high side for West Texas or any program, but because of the, we've just been trying extra hard this time. We've been chasing stuff this year that normally we would just watch it on radar and let it go. Meteorologists have named it plain whack-a-mole.
Named it what?
Whack-a-mole, if you remember that game where the mole pops his head up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they hit it. Because the nature of some of these clouds is they're so short-lived that we cannot physically get to them in time to see them. So hence, a lot of reconnaissance days. 60 hours flight time. Flare usage, even though operational days is down, flare usage is about normal. West Texas, almost 700 glaciogenic flares, 54 hygroscopic. The Trans-Pecos program, we're fortunate enough to get a new pilot, very aggressive pilot, very good pilot, doing an outstanding job out there. 9 operational days, 12 total flights, 1 recon, 19 hours of flight time, 212 glaciogenic flares. Again, that the flare count helps, is a good indicator, or has been over the years, of how aggressive they're going after these storms. South Texas has started April 25th. 20 operational days, flight time 71 hours, so you can see that on the days when we have operations in South Texas, the duration is pretty long. So the flights are longer flights in South Texas. 746 glaciogenic flares and 94 hygroscopic flares. Overall, I would say that it's probably a little better year than what we expected with the transition in the El Nino, La Nina patterns. So we still expected the rain to cut off and just go away sooner than, it hasn't cut off yet. And so it's kind of an indicator that we are staying in a neutral pattern a little longer than what we expected.
Yeah.
That's what I have as far as a meteorologist report. I believe Gary Foster had a question on the 2015 analysis by Dr. Ruiz. And to make sure I understand the question, we're looking at the breakdown for West Texas by county, specifically Crockett County. Running across here, in these columns, the initial seeding, that's the number of storms that were formed and seeded in Crockett County. The extended are storms that formed outside of Crockett County and were continued to be seeded in Crockett County. Acre foot of increase, 109,100 acre feet. Almost 3/4 of an inch of rain increase, and for an overall 5.3% increase. I'm not a real big fan of this chart because what this does is it takes the increase and it spreads it out by the total acreage of the county. And so what you're doing is you're dividing the rain that fell in specific areas and you're layering it evenly across the county. Crockett County has one thing that's always been against it and always will. It's the driest county and traditionally always receives the least amount of rain. If you were to take these numbers and look at the increase of the precipitation in the clouds that were seeded over Crockett County, it would be on par with the rest of them. The problem this has is Crockett County traditionally gets fewer storms than anybody else, less rain opportunities. But the increases from seeding per storm are on par with all the rest of them.
Well, that's kind of the reason I asked the question, is because when I saw the acre feet increase, it was the second to the most of all the counties.
Correct.
Yet the percent increase in rain was less, and so I figured that's what it was doing compared.
Correct.
Took the total acreage in the county.
Correct.
So, yeah, that answers my question.
Crockett County is obviously the largest county. I think our average county is somewhere on the 400. Crockett County is,
Yeah.
Twice as
it's
big.
about twice the size
Yes,
of
of all the rest of the counties.
of the other
Yeah,
counties
right,
are.
yes.
I don't remember the exact acreage.
That answered my question, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Craig. It's
I
always
just
good
wanted
to
to
have-
say that George talked about flooding situations, and even this year, typically, this happens in South Texas, not so much in West Texas, but South Texas will get a deep low that comes in and sits right over the San Antonio area, and it'll have a connection to Pacific moisture sometime, and that's where we get these training storms that just dump inches and inches of water. And we even had that this year, and at one time, we were shut down for a little over a week. We suspended the programs because of flooding. So in the operational programs and in the operational plan, our suspension criteria, which includes tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, and flash flood warnings. And on top of that, we also have local influences where the boards of directors will call in and say they had a request, or they noticed that, there's still water standing in a field, or the peanuts are being planted, or peanuts are being harvested, and so we mark off those areas as no-fly zones. And I think we also do that out in the Trans-Pecos area. So the meteorologists are very tied to the local conditions on what's going on, whether it's weather or farming operations.
And the meteorologist got 100% opportunities this time. What's your take on that?
Last year, I mean, we have some very good meteorologists,
Yeah.
very dedicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes some lucky meteorologists too. Because it is weather.
Our congratulations go to them.
Anything else?
Thank you very much, Craig. Next item is consideration and possible recommendation on applications for renewals of weather modification licenses. Looks like we got a group of them.
Mr. Chairman, George Bomar, Program Specialist again. The current fiscal year will end August 31, which means the licenses held by the Weather Modification Associations, the Panhandle Groundwater District, Belding Farms, the SOAR program, and so on, will expire. And so we have applications to get a renewal of the licenses for the new fiscal year 17, which will begin on September the 1st. And I've listed there the current licensees. There are 7 of them, and we have applications from each of the 7. There are no changes in personnel involved with any of these licensees, with the one exception being the South Texas Weather Modification Association. And if you go to their application, you'll find a couple of pieces of correspondence from Jonathan Jennings, who is the meteorologist in San Angelo who provided training for the meteorologist who is to be added to the South Texas license. That's Kendall LaRouche. And also a letter from Dr. Ruiz, who also provided training, 5 months of training in cloud seeding operations. Both of these letters vouch for the fact that Mr. LaRouche has completed his training satisfactorily, and in their estimation is qualified to be in control and in charge of weather modification operations on behalf of the South Texas Weather Modification Association. And so that application reflects the fact that Kendall would be added to the South Texas license, as well as the license for the Southwest Texas Rain Enhancement Association. So he really is the only change. We did give him conditional certification once he completed his training this summer. And so when we issue the new license in a matter of a couple of weeks to both Southwest Texas and South Texas, we would include Kendall LaRoche's name on those two licenses. Recall that the license is good for 1 year. There is a fee of $750 comes with the application for each of these licensees. We have received applications and we have received fees from all 7 of those who hold a current license.
Well, it seems to me everything's in pretty good order, and if with Jonathan and Archie making the recommendations on Kendall, I would suggest that everything appears to be in really good order. If you have any exceptions that we need to know about.
No, sir.
Is there any reason why we can't recommend approval?
I move that we recommend approval of the bedding, panhandle, seating operation, act repairs, research, South Texas Weather Modification, the Southwest Texas Rain Enhancement Association, Trans-Pecos Weather Modification Association, the West Texas Weather Modification.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The recommendation is approved.
Do we need to do something separate on Kendall's licensing?
No, sir.
Take separate action, or is this?
No, I don't believe so. He's merely being added to the license that's being renewed for those
Excellent.
2 organizations that are based in Carrizo Springs and Pleasanton.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Item H is the recommendations for agenda items for the next meeting.
Yes, sir. We have a permit that will expire for the South Texas program based in Pleasanton early next year, and I anticipate there will be an application for a new permit for that program near the end of this year. So a meeting of the committee sometime over the course of the winter would be timely.
Okay. When does the permit come due?
It expires in early March, but I anticipate we'll have an application from South Texas Weather Mod Association by November or December.
So a meeting early December, I think, might be appropriate. Huh?
Would be.
Okay, what,
Early December. Do y'all like Thursdays?
Mm-hmm.
uh-huh. About the first Thursday in December. Okay. 10 o'clock on the first Thursday in December.
Well, that's the first,
Oh,
Yeah,
that's December the 1st?
is a Thursday.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that too early?
Probably
me.
not.
It
You
is
could
for
move
me.
it back a week or 2.
Yeah, Hunters.
Let's go for the second Thursday.
That's the 8th. We're open then.
Okay. 8th of December. Excellent. Are there any further issues to be brought before the committee? It's 11 o'clock. Meeting's adjourned.